I think that's it.
Or do you want to just type it? Just type it in. Just type it in. Just type it
BT, no. I think you can use BT. Well, they'll have to do that. It's no good.
Who's concealed? The
BT. I think we'll have to do it. That's a problem. I suppose that then we use for or so it's my dog. Well, one of my dogs.
Oh, definitely as long as you are.
Yeah, well, no, yeah.
You must speak French.
Very important. We've got a house in France, but we hardly ever get to it these days.
Right.
It's in Normandy. What a surprise.
Yeah.
Did you have a house in France?
Yeah, my sister-in-law lives there.
No, well, I don't know what we're going to do with ours because of Brexit. Little town called Canisi outside Sunderland.
Right.
Where else is that near?
It's in a place called Labsey, which is, you have no reason to go there.
No, the trouble is these little villages, you don't tend to know where they are, do you? You've sort of got to go near.
It's about an hour in London.
Well, La Rochelle this time, is it?
That's probably La Rochelle for the South.
Yeah, that's what that's why I put to sign.
They moved from here from
Okay, shall we make a start? Right.
Yeah.
Maintenance. I don't know how much we need to look at maintenance. I don't know what you think about this because we've got that wonderful piece of English legislation that oh gosh, excuse me. That has been imported into Guernsey law, the Access to Neighbouring Land Guernsey Law 2016, which I'll be perfectly frank and tell you, that is pretty well a complete replication of the Access of Neighbouring Land Act.
Yes.
We just continue where we were. We're on page 32. I was talking about maintenance, but sorry, I beg your pardon, and easements for maintenance. You know, have we finished? Oh, sorry. I thought this would be fun. They're talking amongst themselves. I didn't say that. Oh, go on, you talk, John. You're more authoritative than me. Clearly, they don't want to listen to me at all. Maintenance, but I wasn't going to talk about it because of that wonderful piece of legislation.
Yes, in our discussion on Destination for Peter Family, I mentioned the case of Pedlin and Orley, and that has now largely been supported by the wonderful Access to Neighbouring Land Guernsey Law 2016.
Which, if you've ever done that in England, is, I would say, a complete replication.
It is borrowed heavily from both the English Access to Land Law and I believe also from my recollection of discussions with the former HM Procureur, Howard Roberts, I think it was the New Zealand version. Yeah, and despite my protestations as to why are we plundering English and New Zealand law, they are common law jurisdictions, to which my riposte was,
this is not a common
we're
law.
not, Howard.
No.
We begged to differ. He had more power than I did, so I lost. And ended up with that law.
I find it curious that these pieces of English legislation have just been supplanted into Guernsey law, particularly in these areas which have got absolutely nothing to do with English law.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is what it
Yeah.
is.
You know, I was pushing for, let's do something which fits more with voisinage.
Yes, that's right.
Those wonderful
Yes.
concepts
Yes.
of
I
cooperation.
agree.
Um,
Because you haven't got voisinage. have
I
you?
mean, well, Gordon is with me on this one. He
You
quite
think-
likes voisinage.
No, no.
I thought it was.
Oh, you do have voisinage, do
I
you?
thought it was the case that New Jersey case.
But it's Jersey.
No, Jersey has voisinage, but I didn't think Guernsey.
It's never been fully applied.
I didn't get No, I didn't think it. I mean, Jersey does have voisinage, I agree, but I didn't think Guernsey did. Am I correct in that?
Well, it's there to be used
Yeah, but
for in good argument, but it's never been used in any particular case.
I thought that I could be getting the cases. Caulfield case, which our bailiffs sat on, which suggests that the prince he would follow those principles if they were to be.
But is there much point since you've got the access to neighbouring?
It's in there somewhere from when I did it last time, but I can't remember which part.
What, do you know the case, do you? Okay, I mean, I'll have a look at
next.
I'll have a look at my Jersey notes.
Yeah.
So you're telling me it's a Jersey case?
I don't know if it was on this page, I just got to forget about it.
All right.
It's
Mind. Anyway, I don't think we've got it, but I agree with you. Could be used, but
most of, and I haven't seen a question come up in the pass it down papers, because well, there's only been one, since the law came into force, I think, which might ask you anything to do with the access to neighbouring land law. The one case, which is Birch and Finley, that has been decided on the law, I think the only response of myself and other practitioners was, oh, that's interesting. The magistrate decided to apply the law in effectively the widest sense. So I think what we could take from that is the law presumes you will be given access. In other words, it avers to that side rather than why should you be given access, prove it to me first. It's you're going to get access, now let's just work out the terms. So it's quite friendly in terms of the person needing the access, the claimant.
And it's the burden then on you to pay what terms is required.
Effectively, yes. So they say, well, look, we presume you're going to get access. What are the terms you're offering? And of course, if the neighbouring landowner, they don't have to make any representations to the court. But if they did make representations, that's the point at which they could say, that's not good enough because he's going to cause this damage to my property, and then you can work it out. Enclave, now, that's an interesting one. I think it has come up in some previous questions.
It has, I think. Yeah.
So a possibility it'll pop its head up again. Here, I would have to say that the very first thing I would do if confronted with a question on enclave is I would pull my copy of the Code Civil out and see what help I could get from that. Because in Guernsey, there's been almost nothing on it, amazingly. Crascan Trainel is sort of in the same area, although the decision there was based on an analysis of Destination de Famille. There is a Jersey case on enclave, and I'm embarrassed to say I've completely forgotten the name of it. It's only a short little one, but it did offer some interesting pointers to perhaps the way the Guernsey court would also apply it.
I'll have a look.
Yeah. The really important thing, and I know this came up in the question I've seen on enclave, is where the vendor caused his retained land to be enclave because he failed to
Yeah.
he failed to do something. So if the enclave is caused by, I think in the French it's his own hand, he's not going to get the relief he seeks.
So in that example, if I sell off part of my garden
And forget to
Yeah.
retain a right
Yeah.
of way, you can't rely on the doctrine.
Whereas you can, I presume, if you're a purchase. Sorry, if you're because that would be a reservation, wouldn't it? So I presume you can if it's
yeah.
a granted.
It would be interesting to see, again, for the same reasons. If you're the purchaser, you had to have an advocate, you had to be legally advised, and you utterly forgot to insist you had right of way. So you, in effect, bought a defective title. Why are you pleading before the court that you should now be given assistance when the situation came about and you had every possibility? You weren't forced into buying the land. No one made you buy it. That would be very interesting to see.
And I'm right in saying there are no easements and necessity in Guernsey.
Servitude.
Oh God, I'm sorry. Oh God, John. Oh, shall I walk out now? Shall I just cut my throat now? Sorry. Right. Service providers, I'm not sure. Well, they pop up in conveyance.
I've never seen it crop up in any question.
No, I haven't.
It's just one of those things you can have in the back of your mind. They're not servitudes as such. But they behave like a servitude,
yes.
but they arise out of enacted legislation.
That's right.
So it's the right of certain service providers who, in circumstances prescribed by the law, to put a cable, a pipe, something in your land.
Yeah. There's not much you can do about it.
And there's nothing you can do about it. The reality is they would almost never seek to rely on the law. They'd try and negotiate with you. They'd enter into a proper contract. The reason for that is actually quite commercial. The requirements that must be met under the law are quite strict in terms of the protections they offer to the landowner. What the service provider will always try to do is negotiate a private contract which is less onerous. They don't like the law, it's too severe for them. Mitoyenneté,
It does pop up sometimes.
it does pop up occasionally. We all translate it, and I'm as guilty as anyone of calling it party ownership. The problem is that party ownership, as a term of English law, has very specific meanings that don't translate into mitoyenneté. So
It's co-ownership.
it's co-ownership of a different
kind. Yeah. I would agree with you. Yeah.
So as usual, use the English terminology with care. Again, the uncertainty as to and use the uncertainties to right of access. Again, using the new Access to Neighbouring Land Law, which has a specific section that deals exclusively with your rights to maintain the wall that you own or mitoyen. So the old customary law has largely been overtaken by the new one. I don't think I'm going to go through all the details of the access to neighbouring land law.
No, you can read them. Yeah, I don't see any point in that. Come on down. Still use that? Yeah.
Gosh, I've got to be pretty brave to raise the Clonmert hammer.
I know.
It's done.
Is it done? I love that. I absolutely.
I was thought happy to raise it.
Oh, were you?
It's always excited. Hello, 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 Emily will pass on the people. Suck the Lord's Prayer.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was a school play, but
I just thought, you know, maybe it's what I could count all the time.
yeah, I wish.
Let's see.
What page, where are we?
We're on page 39 because we're ignoring. We're not ignoring.
Yeah.
We're not ignoring the new law, but it's just section after section.
It is, this is a very big topic.
Yeah. I don't know who the Fossey
Servitude Force again has largely been supplanted
overtaken, isn't it?
by the law. Yeah.
Mm.
The next part on limits of servitudes, and that flows into aggravation. This is again one of those areas where it should be straightforward and simple, but the law is more nuanced, and it's quite difficult sometimes to pin down exactly what the advice to a client in specific circumstances would be. I would suggest that you always start from the principle that, firstly, the servitude is always to be exercised in accordance with its terms. So you look at what the servitude says you're allowed to do. If then it isn't clear, and one of the issues in badly drafted or very old documents is it's not always clear where you can exercise the right. And the customary law, and we would follow this because it was the principles followed in Singleton and Lanuri, which is a court of appeal case, is that the owner of the servient land can, if it's not clear where the right is to be exercised, indicate where it is to be exercised. And that's not something that's then fixed, because if it was never fixed in one place, the owner of the servient tenement can move it. So it's not like you get one chance to move it, you could move it again in another 10 years.
Are you talking about boundary? Do you mean a boundary or something?
I haven't got the boundaries
No,
yet.
it could be a right away, couldn't it?
Could right away,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so if you decide the right of way, you have the right of way, the owner of you have right of way in the land, but the owner of that land says, right, for this purposes, it's going to be
You
from
drive-
A to B. But in 10 years' time, I want to build something, a garage on A to B.
Correct.
And then B to B.
Correct. Yeah. And of course, the other major principle, which is that servitudes are construed strictly in favour of the servient tenement owner. So that is, to a large extent, the opposite view to an easement. An easement is an accommodation to the dominant tenement. Servitudes, we turn everything on it the other way around and say the servitudes, because it's an imposition on the owner of the servient tenement, it is construed in favour of that owner, of the servient tenement.
Where do you practically see that?
Contract creating a servitude is always construed against it.
That's not what I've said.
The opposite, isn't it? page 40, second line, that should be a contract.
So the owner of the
always construed in favour
where's that? Sorry, the
5.7.
5.7. The owner that's named Kate.
Well,
Need
so it's all around.
Where's?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Critical. In the extent of such a. Oh.
That's the English.
And our shoulders are states the uses. There must not be such as to render. In other words, the document sex. No, I think it's the other way around. If you read the rest of this, hold on. Contract creation servitude is always construed against everyone in favour of. Banach states the use of the servitude must not be such as to render the burden on the servient.
That's correct.
Yeah, more inconvenient, more onerous. Right to civility. Right can only be exercised at convenient times, reasonable manner, in a convenient place. No, that's the wrong way round. Sorry, because if you read the rest of it.
In fact, even the following paragraph.
Yeah, indicate parts of the dominant jump, but does not. So they're strictly construed against the servient.
But then, because that's the point, it doesn't have to be the most convenient route.
No,
for
it
the
doesn't.
user.
It's the most convenient for the servient.
Correct.
Person.
Yeah.
It's going to be the dominant owner, isn't it? Sorry.
Well, it's more correct. So it's servitude is strictly construed in favour of the servient owner.
So sorry, we're changing the first part.
No, we're changing to like in favour of.
It's contracting servient.
Yeah, because the rest, if you look at the rest of the context, it doesn't make sense. Those sentences don't make sense. Contract creation servitude is always construed against dominant. In favour of.
Construed in favour.
Yes, because if you read the other bits there, they don't make sense unless you read it that it's against the dominant. Sorry, I can't hear you. Yeah, no, the rest of it doesn't make sense unless you reword that. Yeah.
Do we then need to change the other paragraph?
Yes, you do. Yeah. Because if you read the rest of it, it doesn't make sense.
So the owner of the owner of the serving land may classify this does not.
Yeah.
So servitudes are strictly construed
In favour
of
the servient owner. That's correct. Yeah.
Sorry, how are you changing that though?
I changed it to since servitudes are strictly construed in favour of the servient owner. Because the rest of it doesn't make sense unless you read it like that.
Yeah, and you just
Right. The next issue that leads on to is aggravation. Strictly speaking, aggravation.
I call it aggravation.
Yeah. Now this is potentially an area again you could get a question on because it's legally interesting because it's not always totally clear whether aggravation has occurred or not. Essentially, and again, it's difficult to pin down where Guernsey law may have settled on this, because as Merrill has put here in the Code Civil, or certainly in the Coutume, they allowed a little bit of flexibility in terms of Well, if you own a piece of land and you've got a right of way to go to the piece of land, if you buy another piece of land next door, can you still use the right of way to get to the second piece of land you bought? Under the Coutume Réformée and the later Code Civil, they sort of said, well, yes, as long as you don't put an undue burden or a change in the use onto the servient tenement, you could also use it for that next door piece of land. In Guernsey, certainly in practice, we would disagree with that.
Okay.
We would say, well, you can't, because the point is, how much more land can you add on? If there's no clear rule, you could theoretically have a right of way to get to an area of land that's 10 perches in size. You buy the field next door, which is 4 verges, and claim to be using it for that as well. Where are the limits?
Sorry, can you explain? I'm not really sure.
It is.
I'm just reading it here. It's not clear to me.
No, well, that's because it is a difficult area. Full stop.
Yeah.
So I can't give you a perfect right. This is when it applies. When it doesn't apply.
Yeah, I can probably give you an example when it doesn't. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? Because I'm just working off the top of my head. I would guess. So I like drawing pictures. I would guess. Tell me if I'm wrong, John. If that's owned by X, that's owned by Y.
Yeah.
And you have a right of way for that land, and it is a right of way. Sorry, to get onto X, and it's been given just general foot, horse, vehicle. Would you agree? Well, yeah, whatever, just a general. For the owners of that piece of land, if that building there is a house and it is then converted, so you've got all the planning consents, blah, 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 I'm not worried about that. So it's converted into a hospital, hotel, you get, I think you know where I'm going with this. Then I would have thought that servitude there would not be used.
See, that's interesting because I would say that
You say
use is irrelevant.
But I just thought that was because I thought that would increase burden on the servient land.
No, because once you give the fullest right of way possible, that's the fullest right. You
Really?
give.
So even if you've got that, so
But that's the principle in Singleton and Early.
So you think, okay, so if we cut that back.
Oh, well, if
we cut it back and we then do something, that would be an aggravation.
If it was a right of way on foot only, you can't drive a car.
Well, you can't drive a car. No, that doesn't work, does it?
That's just not
no, that doesn't matter. But
the aggravation.
Oh, okay. Because I just said that was aggravation because I thought there was a bigger burden put on the servient owner there because of the nature of the
aggravation is doing a little drawing.
Yeah, cool. I like drawing. You know that.
You then buy.
Is it only where you buy extra pieces?
Well, to me, it's the classic example of where an aggravation would arise. Okay. Because
I understand that, but I thought that would have been an aggravation as well. But if you're telling me it's not, I'm happy to. I'm happy to.
It's not a clear area of law.
Because if that's just, oh God, I mean, I don't know how you phrase it. So if you're saying foot, horses, vehicles for domestic use, then
that's different.
But then you're just breaking the but then that's not. Oh God,
you've limited.
Yes, but that's not an aggravation, is it? That's just no. Oh, we try to work. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I agree.
Which is why my conclusion so far, I might change my mind next year when I come across some other authority. But my conclusion so far is the classic aggravation is when you add a piece of land to the dominant tenant, and then attempt to claim the benefit right for the added land, because then the proper claim of the owner of the servient tenement who has the right to raise aggravacio is stop using the right for the land I did not grant it for.
Actually, that makes sense. If you're saying that these rights are attached to the land.
Correct, because servitudes
That's
are
right,
attached
to
to
land.
land.
So if you're saying that, then it's not going to be attached to that. It's not going to be attached to that bit of land. It's only attached to that bit of land. Right. Yes. All right.
However,
Anyway, sorry, I get
I
it.
don't mind, without seeing your piece of paper, that makes me.
Oh, what? Oh, God. Well, no. I mean, it was only, sorry, there was nothing. Foot, I think it was extensive, wasn't it? Foot,
Yeah, foot,
horses,
horses,
vehicles,
vehicles.
a lot.
Not a lot.
And what John was saying, I get this, I mean, I think, yeah, is that that's servitude is only for that bit of land.
Yes.
So therefore, if you add another bit, why not? Another bit of land, then how can the servitude that's been gone for that bit of land, was not got, that bit of land, why is that bit of land?
Correct.
Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. Because it's attaching to land and it was never actually given for that other bit of land.
but the reason I'm sort of being a little bit uncertain in some ways is the authorities and the writers on the whole subject are not clear.
It's going to be very fact specific.
It's muddied, yet it's very fact specific.
Mm. Yeah, it does say, to be honest, it does say whether it's a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
And it's the whole point of the group that I think is it just it increases the use of that burden on that right.
Yes.
Arguably.
Arguably, without question, if you add land,
Yeah.
and the other killer point, in my opinion, from the point of the servient tenement owner is, but I have not given the right for that land. So your right to cross my land is for that piece.
Yeah.
Because that's all you owned when I granted it.
Yeah. I'm not, can I just say, I'm not sure. No, it doesn't. No, because I actually think, I think the way you. No, I think what you've got to look at, it's not, I mean, it does say in here, sorry, it does say, has the burden increased, etc., etc. But I think it's something more fundamental than that. It's not necessarily, so I know what it says there, and I did write that, but I actually think it's more fundamental. Well, that is, that's servitude to people on for that bit of land. If you then say the price of that bit of land, it's never granted for that bit of land.
I know, but who's going to know why he's using it anyway? I know, but he won't. Look, if there are.
Because if you're saying these things attached to land, then that is never the land.
If he bought the extra bit and then put a house on it.
Oh, yeah.
And tried to claim the right of way. It's okay. If Y's land.
I know, but why could still be using that tax bit, let's say. He could still be using that to get to his own land, which is Y.
Yeah.
So if he built another house on it, he used that. He'd be saying, well, I'm claiming this access because my bit under Y, not because the.
No,
But you still- but you
because
still
you
got-
know, but it's not. But it's
You
never
still
been
don't get-
given for that bit of land. Am I right in saying that?
I know, but he's got all these bits inside.
But it's-
access that.
But it's the nature of the servitude, isn't it? It's touching the, it's affecting the land. It is.
It's a droit immeuble,
Yeah.
it's attached to the land. Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that will trigger. In fact, what he'll discover is he just can't sell it.
Yeah.
This is what aggravation is about, because this is the remedy that lies in the hands of the serving tenement owner. You say, I am claiming an aggravation in the use of the servitude because you are using it for land that was not the subject of the grant. Now, the authorities, as I say here in France, are a bit confused because they seem to suggest you can have a bit of flex, a bit of elbow room.
Yeah.
I don't think that is the case in Guernsey. I think we're a little more strict on its application.
So for an exam type question, are you saying that the issue would be the adding of the land, what would be X's remedies and how do they?
Agravacio is the only one I can think
I think so. I
Absolutely,
can't,
yeah,
because you know, the example I came up with doesn't work. No,
It's
it's not
hard
an
to work,
Agravasio.
yeah.
Therefore, I can't think of any other situation.
Yeah.
It's got to be when you do something. Go on.
So, if X is now, and that's where Y is the right way.
Oh, draw it, for goodness sake. Come up and draw it. It's easier to visualise these things, because otherwise. Right. Go on.
So, this is A by Y, but with a right way X. Right? X, the grant, the right way grant for X, so the property is X, and it's all here. X then changes its use of subdivides it and sells it off and puts it all in there. That, or the land parcel needs to decide that we have a claim, but already right.
Well, if he sells it off, okay, if he keeps it, gosh, that's Merrill's point, which is that an increased burden?
Yeah, that's
Because he's
yeah,
adding
yeah,
use to
that's
the
right.
land.
That's similar to that one. Isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
So they move the boundary of the right of way.
Certainly, if you have a right of way for a limited distance, then two things will happen. Firstly, if it was specified in the original creation, clearly, if you try to proceed beyond that point, that's an unlawful use.
Yeah.
It's not aggravational, it's unlawful.
Yeah.
Right. So, but if it was just granted generically to the property and there was no limit,
I don't think there's a problem.
merely subdividing the property into 2 units wouldn't raise aggravatum.
No.
Right, okay, here you're engaging a different
That's
issue,
different.
which is if you have the right granted to one property. Now remember, it's a subsidiary right. Because it's a subsidiary right, it is not divisible at the sole instance of the dominant tenement. It's not theirs to subdivide.
Yeah, okay. So what would that be? Is that?
Well, in
No,
that,
it's a different issue,
that's
isn't
not-
it? It's whether you can,
it's a different issue, and what you discover is that the owner who bought the part further up hasn't actually got the use of the right of way, because
Okay.
the part
Yeah.
which is closest to wherever you commence the access has the right of way, the further part doesn't.
Yeah.
So you break it in two, and one of you ends up with a defective title.
Can you do, how do you practically divide a property that has a right of way?
Because you will often find in practice the parties will negotiate, or should negotiate with good counsel very carefully, is this right you're giving me divisible?
Okay, so it's the divisible and indivisible point. Yeah.
So if you give me the unilateral right to subdivide my land, hey presto. So you'll find in any development creation of rights, it will inevitably contain some reference to the fact that this right will continue to exist notwithstanding the subdivision of the premises. Sometimes you'll find practitioners, because they're innately extremely cautious, will say, and notwithstanding the use to which the land may be put. Now, since Singleton and Nuri, I would suggest those words are superfluous, because what the appeal court was saying there was, if you want to be able to say a servitude cannot be exercised in a particular way, you need to limit it at the time you create it. Because otherwise, if you don't limit it, there is no limit.
Is that the concept of so if you just have a house here, there's a right of way. If you divide it into two, are you saying only this part will take the right of
if you divide it in two in terms of conveyancing and splitting ownership,
Yes.
correct.
Yeah. You could extend the right of this.
No.
No.
It's not.
So it doesn't extinguish the rights.
No. It doesn't extinguish the right of this.
Correct.
But it doesn't.
Yeah.
You can't divide the right of way.
No.
Correct.
And
No, what you can do, I suppose, am I right in saying that,
oh, I don't know. That, oh goodness me, you would then create a new servitude over that bit. That
Well,
makes sense.
you-
Oh, no, not that, it's not over that bit.
well, if that bit happened to be adjacent to the public road, yeah, but assuming
So
here
this
it's
is-
not.
yeah, it just depends on the
Yeah.
nature. So this is a private road.
Yeah.
This
Ah.
property is this property, and I
Yeah.
have a way to deal with this private
Yeah.
process. Yeah. This property, then we're going to knock it around.
Yeah.
Doing it.
Yeah.
The right of way, is like the right of way that X has given over Y and the whole, then divide.
no,
No,
the
because
statute doesn't split. No, it doesn't split.
So they would get the benefit of the, sorry, maybe I'm not using the right language, is that it doesn't divide in Z and Y get the benefit. in Y.
whoever will get to their land first
Y,
still has the right.
yeah. It doesn't-
No.
Correct.
And you would then have to get
X or Y
Yeah.
or something like that, isn't it? Yeah. Yes.
And next we get an injunction.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
well, then you'd be into an enclave situation, and the court would then be faced with the decision: did they bring about this by their own hand? They're not going to be very sympathetic.
Does that not change if they've got in the right of way?
Yes.
If the right
Yeah.
of way-
Yeah.
The key term, if it's divisible, then you can do that splitting and retain the right of way. If the right of way is divisible, right, if the service-
No, but you've actually got to put it in
You've got to
the,
express it clearly. So I'm giving you a right of way, and I am prepared because you've been honest with me. So look, I'm going to go and try and get permission to build 2 houses on this land, and I'm going to want to sell them off individually. So I need to ask you, may I, when I sell them, subdivide the right? And presumably we've negotiated the price on the basis you probably are going to get permission. I'm happy I've been compensated for my sale of my land. Fine. No problem.
But if you're talking about the old domains,
Correct.
old walls, then it's only going to be complicated with old.
Yeah.
So then you
Yeah.
want to do this.
Yes.
yeah, and if X won't agree, surely, am I not right in saying that Y is there, in order to facilitate the conveyance, whatever, that Y is going to have to grant or give Z some sort of right over his land to get to his land. Does that make sense? Do you not agree with that?
Now I think that's I think that's fair. What, if you're in an old
No, I
conveyancing-
don't actually.
If you're in an old conveyancing situation, then I'll.
You just create a new servitude over Y. Correct.
Well,
But for Z,
sorry, if they
for Z, sorry, yeah.
If they can, yeah.
Yes, sorry, yes, that's what I meant, yeah. Surely that's the way you facilitate the sale.
Well, except you've got this.
Ah, but that's not quite the same as.
Yeah. So really, so if rethink this,
Yeah,
do that.
yeah,
So in order to get to the two, right,
yeah,
now he's okay,
yeah.
he's not. And you do this on the road. This is the only way you get it. You're stuck.
In most circumstances, you've got to agree. something.
You have
Yes, it's got to be it. That, yeah. There
It's
isn't
just the way
one.
you do it. So that's private, located.
Then you just do,
Yeah.
Yeah, you just get Y to grant to
Yeah.
give Z something
Yeah.
there, and that, but that's more difficult. Then
Yeah.
you're
Stuff.
that one you could do something with.
But it's
If that's the price.
If that's a public road,
that's
yeah,
public road,
yeah.
because you could
Yeah.
you go in that.
And that's the only thing why I could. To be honest, if you want to sell that piece of land, that's what you do.
So the key thing is just look where the access points are and whether the right of way is visible or it doesn't. If it's silent on visible.
Then it's not
It's
divisible.
not visible. The principle that's behind that is because it is subsidiary to the absolute ownership. You've got to remember, again, this feeds back into this idea that you have extinctive prescription constantly running against servitude. Well, certainly it's constantly running against servitude, let me get this right, discontinue,
Yes.
or servitude apparent. So something like a servitude of flowing water is continuous. It requires not the action of man. Prescription doesn't run against it. A right of way is the classic. Prescription runs.
But anything created by man, basically, isn't it?
Basically, yes. Yeah. Fade along. You've got the expression.
Yes, that's right,
here.
fade along.
Yeah.
So you can have a servitude
By prescription.
By prescription, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they happen quite frequently. You would be surprised.
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, if you did walk across a path.
For 20 years. And the classic case law there is Slaughter and Smith. Slaughter, S-L-A-T,
No.
S-L-A-W-T-H-E-R,
T-H-E-R.
and Smith.
S-M-I-T-H. Sorry.
Again, so there is.
Who sadly died last year. She committed suicide. That's sad.
I think do they distinguish as against the Serbian? I'm getting
Dominant tenement.
dominant.
So was no, sorry.
Well,
When they're extinguished,
doesn't matter, does it?
Doesn't
It's
matter.
gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
The discussion, for example, of right of way with vehicles and built
Yeah.
an extension.
That is
You
the
can't get
absolute
through it.
classic. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's obviously no right of way.
Yeah. Or alternatively, you go down on site. It talks about a pedestrian access through the rear yard,
Yeah.
and you're confronted with a concrete block wall, and you think, okay, how long has the wall been there? One of the things, it doesn't actually mention it in the conveyancing guide, but if I had the opportunity to show you, we have aerial photography instantly available to us back to 1979. So we can check through the years what's changed. I can go back to 1962 if I'm prepared to pay a bit of money, and I can leap back to 1945 for free.
Do you then, if you were doing a new conveyance in that situation, do you take that servitude out of the new conveyance? What's the
I would probably, having advised the purchaser, you don't have to worry about that servitude crossing your land. I'd probably say to him, and I'm not even going to refer to any general rights and servitudes in your conveyance, simply because it doesn't exist. You've got to remember, prescription doesn't just limit the claim, it literally extinguishes it. The title is free, it's gone.
And you wouldn't go on to indemnity insurance?
No.
No, I mean, it doesn't sound like you need.
You're doing indemnity insurance.
Oh, do you do not do indemnity? No.
Right, okay.
Sorry.
Personally, never,
Okay.
ever. Waste of money.
Why?
Because every single policy is written under English law. So it says, we have indemnified you against the loss of an easement. So I
No.
point out to all the people, you're never going to go and make a claim because the law of the policy is inapplicable.
Really?
You will find many practitioners happily taking out policies complete waste of money. I think the worst, now I'm not going to mention the law firm. There is a very lovely set of apartments developed on the west coast of Guernsey, called Les Residences, which is next to the disputed car park at Cobo. Very nice they are, Art Deco building, etc. The advocates advising the developer told him at an early stage that there was doubt over who owned the land in front, which is the only access from the coast road. And the insurer quoted for issuing the DTI policy. The developer coughed up the premium, which was something like £20,000. And then the insurer said, oh, before we issue the policy, we need an independent legal opinion. The advocates came to me, and I wrote an opinion which showed that they owned the land in front, therefore there was no difficulty with gaining access to their land. They needn't have taken out the policy at all. Yeah, the partner of that law firm and I, we have a testy relationship.
So, but I mean, we probably maybe too much of it, because it is quite, like, it works better when you've got the diagram.
Yeah.
Tomorrow,
Yeah.
for the exam, in terms of sort of things to spot the problem.
There is at least one,
some of them have got.
there's at least one question we're going to look at where
Yeah.
there it is.
Which one is it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at that one.
Yeah.
Because that's a question along this kind of line.
Yeah.
You're being asked to advise on servitudes and right of way marked down here on the dotted line, etc. I can't remember the exact.
I've got it, but I don't know it.
Yeah, question 3, 2016. Oh no, that's a different one. That's question 1.
Questions.
The April 16.
Hold on, what have we got on here? April 26th. Yeah.
Yeah, question 1, April
There's question
Yeah.
2016. Yeah. As usual, it's a question with all sorts of mixed issues.
We can do that one tomorrow.
We could do that tomorrow. And we can
Yeah. We've got some bond ones that we can do later this afternoon. Oh, I don't like it that you're leaving me. I suspect, what have I got here? Yeah, I've got a couple of questions we can, problem questions we can have a look at on servitudes. If you're off, we may as well go to a 10-minute break then to get some tea, and then come back and have a look at questions. When we come back, she says, trying to find her worksheet, servitudes and problems, okay. We will have a look at question 4, I think it's 4, which should be fairly straightforward. I think it's basically can't do anything, but anyway, we can talk about that. And right, we are on worksheet 4. Have you all got that one? Okay, I'll do a copy in the break now. We may as well do 4, 5, and 8. I think there's some covenants in there as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Do you want me to copy you?
Okay, okay, let's have a cup of tea and then come back. Thank you ever so much.
It's quite a tough ask to get through.
No, but I just cannot see how we didn't last week, so.
I think by the time we get to the revision stuff, if there's anything pressing,
Yeah.
we might.
Yeah, I think if you tell me you've only got to do that one we just take this and try and get some smellies with, you know, how helpful that is. I didn't realise this was. Do you realise that? Let me just.
No.
Oh, yes, yes, and I was kept well informed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Right.